Yes, yes, we can.
Hi. Hi, my name's Satomi. I'm one of the youths under Dr. Miller. Um, I'll be talking about YRM today, but I am currently a registered nurse. I'm bouncing in between a couple ICUs since I started traveling in around February. Um, I I joined this project because I was always on like the clinical side of things, and I never got to like do research and stuff like that. I've been in participation like as a um as a participant before, but I've never been in like the behind the scenes. So I joined YRAB thinking it would be a cool opportunity to learn some more about it.
Thank you, Satomi. Would Amiera or would like to introduce themselves as well?
Yes. So, how I found out about this conference was I was doing youth leadership in action, and I was told at first I got introduced to that because I was told I had an opportunity to speak up for my community and speak up for the youth and address the issues in society. And I felt as though I was really excited for it. And then after that program ended, the virtual program ended, they asked me if I wanted to do this conference to speak up about what I learned in the program. And I thought it would be a really great opportunity for me.
I'm wondering if either of you could tell us a little bit more about your experiences in working with the program and your biggest takeaway.
I'm primarily just with YRAB. Um, I I will get in. I was gonna get into it a little bit more during my presentation, but um, I think my what was your first question again? I'm sorry.
No problem. Your involvement with the program and your biggest takeaway.
Oh, okay. I joined about a year ago. YRAB meets in during the school year, so I started during last year in October or so. I've been I completed a whole school year this year. But I've been to most of the meetings. And I think my biggest thing that I really liked about it is that you kind of get to it's like a two-way street. Like you get to um share your opinions and like your perspectives with researchers, but then you can also talk to them and then get information from them if you're interested in the research they're doing.
Have you felt that, and this is for both of you, have you felt that your voice as a young person has really helped transform the work?
I think so. I think it's pretty rare to find a space where like professionals really want to hear what young people want to say. Um, and I think I think it's really cool to be able to like actually share your thoughts and stuff like that.
Thank you, Satomi. Sorry to feel like I'm putting you on the spot. Amiera, did you want to share anything? And then we'll hand it over
Yeah,
to Dr. Miller.
I'm sorry about the background noise. The walls are paper thin at this school.
No problem. We can hear you just fine.
But so um I was like I joined Walia in about October going into November. And I feel like my biggest takeaway from it and like would probably be the learning that you don't have to wait for everybody else or somebody else to stand up for you to have to stand up or want to make a change or want to make a movement, that you can just do it on your own. And what was your last question?
I was just asking how did it feel? Did you feel that your voice was being heard and respected, and that you were giving voice that was being listened to?
Yes, the program was more so like they were pushing the youth to lead and do it themselves. So yeah, and I feel like as a 14-year-old, not many people are willing to give people my age the opportunity to speak up or fix things in society that we think are wrong.
That's so powerful, Mara. Thank you for sharing that. That is definitely the importance of having youth involved and engaged. And you kind of summed it up so nicely and neatly that your voice, youth voice matters. And so thank you for sharing that. I am going to hand it back over to Emily for the reintroduction of Dr. Miller. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dana. And thank you, Satomi and Amiera, for sharing such meaningful contributions here. And I'm really looking forward to hearing more of what you have to say through this presentation. So I just want to extend a warm welcome to Dr. Miller. We're so grateful to have you here. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over.
Awesome. And thank you, Riz, for the text and all. And I am delighted to be here with all of you. I just want to confirm that we will then, just timing wise, that we will go for about another hour. Is that right? Correct. Okay. Thanks, Riz. All right. Good. All right. And so before I'm going to introduce our young people, let me just start by positioning myself. So I'm Liz Miller. I use she, her pronouns. I am a doctor taking care of adolescents and young adults at UPMC Children's Hospital in Pittsburgh. I've had the extraordinary privilege of doing research related to violence prevention for the last many years now. It's almost going on 30. And in that context, have been really mindful about how to involve young people and their parents, adult caregivers, and other important adults in their lives in the research process as well. And so it is just joyful for me to spend this next hour with you with the three amazing people who are joining us for this presentation. And this will be a little bit of a mix of my providing some background and then opportunity for each of them to share some reflections about being involved in this work together to ensure that young people are thriving and that we are really moving towards health equity. So who are our young people? And I just want to do first a major shout out to Satomi, who is Zooming in from Japan, where she is with her grandparents right now. So for those of you who don't know, Japan is 13 hours ahead. So it is after midnight, her time right now. So Satomi, I'm like super grateful that you are online and able to participate. And Satomi, as you heard, is part of our Youth Research Advisory Board, and now is a traveling nurse and has been working with our Youth Research Advisory Board over the last year. And it says that, being part of this conference was really important, in particular because of her passion around mental health and well-being, and how critically important it is for us to talk about the available resources and supports that were for her less accessible when she was in middle school and high school. So Satomi, thank you for being here. And then Amiera Blankenship, who, as you heard, comes to us through work in youth leadership in action, which we'll talk about in a moment. And she has been an extraordinary leader at her school at Pittsburgh Classical Academy, and is very, very motivated to speak up for her community of youth. And of note, Amiera has been deeply involved in getting our first annual Youth Thriving Summit going in Pittsburgh. That's going to happen June 5th as a youth-led, youth-driven summit, and an opportunity to showcase young people's accomplishments over this past academic year. And then last but not least is the fabulous Mike Crist, who I have gotten to know through our partnership with the Steel Valley School District. This school district, and the reason his Zoom is popping up as Kevin Clark is one of our violence prevention specialists who works with both the University of Pittsburgh, and he's deeply embedded in the Steel Valley School District, implementing a range of curriculum focused on racial and gender justice and healthy relationships and violence prevention. Mike is a junior at Steel Valley and is a football player, so trying to extricate him from various athletic responsibilities and academic responsibilities. We're just grateful that he has been part of our work together, which he says is to really bring change to young people and to bring hope for his generation and the generations that follow. So super joyful to have the three of you with me today. And I'm going to start by sharing my screen here. There we go. And Emily, can you put your camera on and give me a thumbs up if that's displaying properly? Yay! Awesome. So just as we get into this, right? So I just need to disclose, right, and share with you all in terms of my financial disclosure that I actually write some content about sexual violence and partner violence for a medical education group called Up to Date. So just want you to know that. Here are our fabulous youth presenters, and you'll see them on camera in a moment. What we're going to try to cover in our time together today is thinking about what are some of the barriers that get in the way for young people's, really participation in research. Think about ways to increase access to research for young people, especially young people who are experiencing discrimination, marginalization, and oppression. And describe how involving young people as collaborators in research actually makes our science better and more impactful. So what are we thinking, when I talk about social and structural barriers to youth research participation, the most common is that we don't even bother to ask young people to participate. And so that's one thing that I'm so grateful that this conference is so mindful about young people's voice and centering young people's voice. But there's also this problem that I have as a health professional, which is that we haven't worked hard enough to build trust in healthcare, build trust in research. And in my mind, for the practitioners and clinicians who are participating in this conference, this one's on us, right? We need to do a better job about building our trustworthiness. Young people don't have enough access to research opportunities, and so we need to be really helping our clinician scientists to really think about how they can make research opportunities easier for young people to participate in. There are many young people who we work with who are working several jobs. They have multiple responsibilities, so those economic constraints get in the way. Time constraints, you're hearing all three of our young people today are juggling many, many other responsibilities. And then this lack of reciprocity being this idea that we can actually share and get something out of the relationship, right? That it's reciprocal rather than a researcher saying, I need 100 participants for this adolescent study, right? Where it's all just one direction and it's the investigator, the scientist who's trying to extract information from young people, that we need to be much more attuned to what's in it for young people and why would they want to participate. And then I think that we need to be always mindful about accessibility. What do we need to do? How do we do our work better so that young people who are experiencing marginalization and oppression are always able to participate? So lots of things for us to keep in mind as we move forward. And I'm going to start by sharing with you the Pittsburgh study, which is our commitment in Pittsburgh to thriving young people and racial equity. And we have a vision that every child in our region is healthy and thriving and achieving their academic goals. And we do so with a very community partnered approach. What this means is that everything that we do always centers community voices, that we are really explicit about undoing systemic racism, that we think about research as advocacy, that we think about data to action, right? That we're always doing research to make the world a better place, and that we have the opportunity to learn from each other all the time. So the Pittsburgh study is set up where professional scientists and community members work side by side with each other. We really talk about community members, including young people, as citizen scientists. And every scientific committee is made up of greater than 50% community member representation. And we have very clear shared principles about our commitment to building trust, our commitment to doing research with people and not on people, having open communication, learning, listening, constantly expanding the table. So, and we come back to every time we're evaluating an event that we do as part of the Pittsburgh study, we come back to these principles and we're like, how well are we doing? Are we really working as best as we can to adhere to these principles? And the Pittsburgh study is big, right? So we have a group working on healthy pregnancy and then in early childhood all the way into adolescence. And so today you're going to hear from Amiera and Mike and Satomi about work that's happening in the adolescent space, but just wanted you all to know that the Pittsburgh study is a much more broad and frankly audacious commitment to building and co-creating interventions together to help strengthen young people's thriving as well as racial equity. And the kinds of measurement that we're looking at on the right, you see accomplishment, right? We absolutely are focusing on things like reducing the racial disproportionality around graduation rates, but we're also putting in many more metrics around thriving and flourishing, including trying to move the needle on young people feeling more hopeful about their future. So that kind of thriving, sort of metric I want you to keep in mind as we talk about creating peace. And you're going to hear from Mike in a moment about his involvement and Kevin Clark's involvement in creating peace at their within the Steel Valley School District. So what is creating peace about? It's really a vision to have adolescents, especially in our neighborhoods in Pittsburgh that have concentrated disadvantage, like under-resourced neighborhoods, where young people learn about and are grounded in their history, in control of their present and have hope for the future. And we do this using an anti-racist youth empowerment focused curriculum. And we understand that we can't actually talk about violence prevention and an anti-violence framework without actually addressing racial equity and undoing systemic racism. So young people are like really interested in problematizing this, like why do we have these inequities, and that we really are making these conversations about racial justice and gender justice much more transparent. And part of having somebody like Kevin as a violence prevention specialist embedded in the school district is because we also believe in building more adult supports, right? And capacity in schools, capacity in communities where adults really understand that young people are extraordinary and that we can provide scaffolding to be able to reduce violence, right? And so what is this is a research study that's funded by the National Institutes of Health. So what do the National Institutes of Health want us to do, right? With this study, they want to know, does something like creating peace reduce violence? Does it reduce the amount of weapon carrying? Does it increase the likelihood that young people will intervene when they see their peers engaging in disrespectful behavior? And will it decrease experiences of bias-based discrimination? We are working across 24 neighborhoods, and one of the neighborhoods is the Homestead neighborhood, where the Steel Valley School District is located, and they are one of our most active in this Creating Peace project. The curriculum focuses on gender justice to begin with, right? Recognizing that patriarchy and undoing patriarchy is a critical piece of doing the work of racial justice. We bring in a historical lens around race and gender, and then spend time thinking about how power works, how power gets distributed, about healthy relationships, sexual consent, and of course, violence prevention, but it's all very integrated. And because it's a research study, we are actually comparing Creating Peace to a more traditional job skills training curriculum, which I'm happy to talk about. But I want to get to Mike to share with you kind of what we've learned so far. This quote here is, I think every young person needs a space like Creating Peace. It's changed the way I've looked at things, even when I talk to my friends. Like before, we used to talk about celebrities or whatever, but now I know how to talk to them about the news and stuff like, hey, how do you feel about this? What do you think we can do about this? And so really tapping into that sense of young people as change agents, which we think is so critical. What do we know so far is that young people really love talking about racism and discrimination. They're hungry for that space. A focus on intersectionality around racism and classism and sexism, homophobia, transphobia, ableism, like that we're really, right, focusing on intersectional themes. We actually were able to do this virtually during the pandemic. And the other piece is that we need to create these kinds of spaces where young people, together with adult supports, can spend time really trying to process, which is incredibly hard, the horrific stories of police brutality and the histories of racism in this country. This offers an opportunity for young people to build community together. And the youth, participatory action part is challenging, but it's absolutely doable. And then what is different about this curriculum is we don't bring people from the outside to do the curriculum. We always identify community members, safe adults in young people's environments to be trained to be the facilitators. So with that, I am hoping that Mike's camera and microphone are working so that you can share a little bit about what it's been like for you as a young person in Creating Peace.
Hi, how's everyone?
Hey, Mike, so good to see you.
Good to see you as well. All right, so you want me to read the questions and answer them?
you just speak from the heart, Mike. You have been one of our most extraordinary leaders in the creating peace space, right? So I don't know, I mean, share with folks like how's it impacted you? How's it impacted your friends, right?
We just had creating peace group. Creating peace, that to me, that's my favorite group. I love creating peace. It gives us teenagers, youth, because you guys do it all ages. It gives us the opportunity to speak about community problems. It gives us opportunities to talk about things that we want to talk about. Every child, in my opinion, has opinions on so many different things that no one really cares about. So whenever we have the opportunity to give out our opinions, to me, that's huge. That's super nice. I think I did the Creating Peace group 3 or 4 different times. So I really enjoyed the Creating Peace group.
And maybe, Mike, think, you've also you've taken the Creating Peace opportunity and then really helped lead our teen leadership work in, Steel Valley. I'm wondering if you can talk about that transition of going from, like getting the Creating Peace curriculum to now, I mean, you're just like an extraordinary leader in your school district.
Right. So I did the Creating Peace group 3 or 4 different times. And then a few months later, Kevin Clark introduced me to the Expect Respect group, teen leadership. There's I think 6 or 7 different peers in there. I feel like what we talk about in there is even more powerful than the Creating Peace group, because we get to learn about how to identify each other, like how people identify as gender, sex. We talk about bullying, relationships, healthy relationships. Like we get really deep into topics when we talk. We'll be in there for almost 2 hours sometimes talking about how the world really is.
And what are some of the things that you're hoping that we'll do next?
I hope this continues, and I hope that like next year, because I'll probably be graduating next year. I hope everyone can get involved. I hope you guys can get more and more people involved. I hope other school districts get involved. I hope more communities get involved. I hope parents can somehow get involved. That way, parents can understand their child on a deeper level than they already might.
And Mike, I'm like so happy that you mentioned parents too, because one of the things that's been pretty magical about the work in Steel Valley is that we actually now have a parent engagement specialist as part of our work, right? Who's like,
awesome.
Miss Sarah, who's coming in and learning about the extraordinary work that you're doing, right? And pushing for change. And then, reporting back to parents, like, you should be really thrilled about what is going on, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so I think there's just a lot of joy. And, I think one of the things that I find myself saying with all of the conversation around the adolescent mental health crisis and all of the really hard topics, right, Mike, that you all have been dealing with,
Right.
that the most important for me for our conference, like an audience to understand, is that young people are not broken. Young people are amazing, and it's really our systems, right, that aren't kind of nurturing and making sure, right, that you all are part of that change. And so, certainly, that Kevin and I have a deep commitment, right, to continue to support the team.
Kevin.
Yeah. Just appreciate you so much. Well, so Mike, thank you. Just stay on, because I know people will be asking us questions, but I'm going to take us into the youth leadership and action work as another example of how young people have been involved in this work. And I just want to do a major shout out to one of my colleagues here in adolescent medicine, Dr. Soko, who has led the way in terms of youth participatory action research for us. And what is youth participatory action research? I think this particular audience knows this quite well, which is the opportunity to involve young people in a community-based participatory research framework. And by giving young people like the skills on like, how do you identify a question? How do you analyze data? How do you engage allies? How do you address challenges, right? And actually going through the process of doing research together gives us an opportunity to really center young people and really reinforce their skills and what they have to offer. And so we love the potential of youth action research. Certainly that it supports youth development, it builds concrete skills, and centers equity and justice, as well as challenging power. And so one example for us in Pittsburgh was a qualitative study of youth who are in the juvenile legal system. So as a doctor, I take care of young people who are incarcerated. And this project was one example where we took time to listen to young people who have been juvenile legal system involved, and what they want to see. And they came up with many recommendations that we're trying to put into place. And I'm going to highlight 3 of these, which are like reforming school culture and like interrupting that school to prison pipeline, engaging young people as advocates and change agents. And you're going to hear from Amiera in a moment about the work that she is doing in this space. And then always being mindful about combining existing data with young people's voices and their expertise. So this Youth Leadership in Action was designed by Dr. Soko. It was implemented starting in 2018, so in the before times, before the pandemic, and started with a few of our Pittsburgh high schools. And students were actually referred into Youth Leadership in Action as an alternative to suspension. So this is all like before the pandemic. And we were really questioning whether or not could we use a youth action approach to make schools more trauma sensitive. And so Youth Leadership in Action, what the young people identified in one of the school districts was the need for increased mental health support. And then the young people did this process of asset mapping. Let's figure out what's already there. Let's figure out which ones of these are like really important. They did some dot voting and then had a facilitated dialogue, and it led to a peer-led mental health support group. And the principal in this Pittsburgh area school said, over my 21 years as a school principal, this program is the best in terms of supporting students that may face graduation obstacles. And I want to underscore this because oftentimes we think that the teen leaders are the ones who are, on student council, straight A students, they're like, and again, absolutely important, right, to have space for that group of young people too. But we wanted to show that young people who were at risk for suspension, at risk for push out from schools, can also be deeply involved in this kind of activity. And what we were able to show, right, is that we actually improved attendance, we improved behavior, we improved grades, right? And so that even in this small pilot of 18 students, we started to move the needle in terms of disciplinary referrals. And a couple of young person quotes, right, should be in every school, regardless of homeschool, should be everywhere because it's important. This is important. Mental health is important. And it makes your days better. There's less weight on my back, which I just love. And so, YLEA is, this Youth Leadership in Action work has been around, how do we best support the mental health needs of young people at the same time that we're encouraging this youth leadership work and that balance. And I think that our young people will have some thoughts about that we need to make sure that we continue to find ways to build self-esteem, self-efficacy, that sense that I can make a difference in the world, and be resilient in the context of this, and we all know, right, how all of us struggled through the pandemic. So we need to pay greater attention to young people's emotional health and well-being. So what have been some of the lessons learned, right? So we need to bolster reciprocity, which I talked about earlier, the takeaways for, youth participants. What are young people getting out of this? And we need to also be mindful of continuously helping adults be better listeners of young people, right? Not every facilitator is really good about taking the time to pause and just really allowing young people's voice to come through. We need to increase research equity. So make sure that there's research infrastructure, that young people are receiving payment, compensation for their time, and that we're really mindful about always pulling up the perspectives of marginalized young people. And that sense of accountability. And this is, an area I hope we can talk about in the discussion is how do we actually hold school districts accountable? Why is it so hard to get the attention of a school principal or a superintendent? How do we get them to be more like the Steel Valley School District, where we've been able to do lots and lots and lots of this activity and is much harder in other school districts, and why? And then how do we get from the stories that young people are sharing then to action? And that does require, for those of us adult allies in the room, how do we build systems of accountability? So youth leadership in action, we actually pivoted during the pandemic and went virtual, and have sustained the programming involvement in our communities. And I hope during the pandemic created a little bit of an anchoring for some of our young people to continue to connect with each other, and created space to explore topics of concern. And so one of the most exciting for me is to have Amiera share with you the Youth Leadership in Action group that she was deeply involved in, and the work that is emerging around bullying prevention. So Amiera, do you want to share some thoughts?
Yes, I do. So basically in Youth Leadership in Action, our bullying prevention topic was our most powerful topic that we ever talked about, because we weren't just looking at it from a victim's point of view, we were looking at it from the person who is bullying point of view. We were taking more so steps to see, we were learning, how would I put it? We were taking steps to see what causes somebody to want to harm others, or to want to cause hurt or inflict pain on another person that didn't do nothing to them. So I think more of the people in our group struggle with it, because it was more so most people assume that when it comes to bullying, they're just doing it because they think it's fun. They're just doing it because they want to. And some of the challenges in our project was we came up with a skit for it. So coming up with the skit was really, really hard. But it was because we tried to make it seem like we had to come up with reasons that somebody would bully somebody. And one of the reasons that we came up with was maybe their living situation isn't right. Maybe they're going through something at home. And then we tried to put it into what can you take away from this situation? What will you take away from it? And I think something that'll be helpful for adults to know about programs like WALIA is that these programs actually change stuff for people. Because when me and this girl Vinay was also in our program, when we came back to our school and we saw stuff like that going on, we noticed the patterns of bullying, and we taught people how to stop it. We asked them what's wrong, gave the reasons, other ways to cope with their problems, not just bullying. And I think adults should really also support the programs because they also help other people get away from doing non-positive things and help them want to do positive things and help the rest of the youth do positive things.
I so appreciate that, Amiera. And I think one of the things that I really learned from you all too was how important it was to spend the time kind of really learning about the sources of bullying, right? And to actually, I think develop that sense of kind of empathy around why is this person choosing to use violence? Why are they harming others? And just that really thoughtful question, right? That really then got to how do we build stronger relationships, with each other in the school community. And your skit was so powerful that way in terms of relationship building and like on some level just kind of loving on each other more, right, to create a school community that just doesn't tolerate that kind of mean and harmful behavior. So thank you, because I think that's, to me, the beauty of working with young people in this kind of youth action research space is the kinds of questions that you ask, I think, are so they're so important and so valuable and help us like really rethink how we're approaching things. So what do you think, Amiera, in terms of what do you want other adults to know about the importance of something like Wailea?
I think I want adults to know that more so when you sign your child up for something like this, or you sign them up for something, it could really change their life. It could change everything that they're doing. And I feel like it would make your kid out to be a leader and teach your kid to be a leader more so, because when I first joined the program, I was like, oh, okay, like now I know, like now I really love speaking up for other people. I love speaking up in general. I like talking about issues, and I like talking about what's wrong with society and what I feel like should be better for the youth, and talk about what could get better in our community. And I think if adults put more time into building up programs like this, I think most of the kids in our communities would stop getting into all the fights and getting into all the drama.
Always, like, you make my heart go pitter patter and bring so, as I was saying to you yesterday, right? It's just, you bring so much joy to this space. And one of the things that I would love for you to share is your role in putting together our first Youth Thriving Summit ever in the Pittsburgh region.
So in our youth summit, which is mainly youth led, is the part I love about it. I am basically like a leader of one of the groups, and I have my own breakout room, and I will be talking about breaking the stigma on mental health for youth, and like explaining to the youth what is stigma to mental health and what is mental health, how can you deal with your mental health. And basically everybody, it's not just one person, it's everybody. At the end of the summit, we all come together and we have a big talk, and we talk about the takeaways that all the youth got from this summit. And we're planning on trying to make this summit that's coming up a yearly thing, so that it happens every year and that we get more youth to want to come and join.
I know, but like hopefully filling up Heinz Field, right? Our goal is to continue to grow this work, and it truly has been so much fun to be able to think about just celebrating all the extraordinary work that our youth leaders have done, but also pushing, right? We're going to actually have our mayor from the city of Pittsburgh, right, at the summit at the end to hear from young people about what change is needed and how young people want to be at the table. And actually, and Amiera, I hadn't even shared this with you yet, that the mayor's office is so excited about this youth summit that they're using this as the opportunity to plan a youth council who will be involved in informing the mayor about what changes need to happen in the city. So you're just like pushing all kinds of boundaries for us. So thank you, thank you, thank you. So I am going to take us then into the last part, and you're going to hear from Satomi about a more formal structure for young people to be guiding the science. And this is our Youth Research Advisory Board. And this Youth Research Advisory Board has now been around for 8 or 9 years. It is supported through research dollars from the National Institutes of Health. And it was really intended to make sure that young people's voices are informing the work that scientists are doing. And so we have young people complete an application to say that they're interested, and then we follow up with them, and then have a process for young people to get some introduction to what is research and research training. And so, Satomi, can I turn it over to you, and you can just tell me when to advance the slides?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Alrighty. Like I said, I think I said a little bit of this before, but my name's Satomi. I use she, her pronouns. I joined YRAB, which is Youth Research Advisory Board, about a year ago, at the start of the last school year. So I'm only 1 year in, but I've been really, really loving it so far. I'm currently a registered nurse, and I joined thinking it was a good way to get involved in research without actually taking part in the research side of things. I've only ever been in the clinical side of medicine, but I've always been interested in nursing research. And as a nurse, I'm always benefiting from research as well. So I thought this was a good way to kind of get into it. And I'm actually now applying for a research position now. So this has been a great way to kind of learn something new. And then I also wanted to say, I know Dr. Liz started to talk about this a little bit, but I also really like that one of the topics we talk about a lot is mental health. And that was just something, especially coming from an Asian background, my parents never talked about. And in school, we didn't really talk about it either. It was kind of taboo, and I didn't really have a lot of accessible resources. And being able to take part in a group that, advises on topics like mental health has been really great for me. So YRAB is a diverse group of teens and young adults who meet monthly to offer youth perspective to interested researchers and community partners about adolescent research. Researchers get to hear feedback from youth, which can offer unique ideas and perspectives. And then it's also cool to just have someone to listen to that's willing to listen to youth ideas as well. But even past that, it's nice that all youth get training in research. It says CPRET, which is short for Community Partner Research Ethics Training. It's kind of like a Research 101, and it's kind of split up in between all the meetings where we have someone who is a professional researcher kind of explain to us kind of the basics of research. We've had conversations about IRB regulations and human subject protection and research ethics and really cool things like that. I think it's a really great way for young people to gain interest in research, because I know when I was in high school, I didn't really think of research as something I could take part in. And then learning these Research 101 basics kind of gives you a background on you know, what to expect as like a participant, or like it can also just like give you like a way to get your feet wet. Like I think it's more, it makes it a little less scary. And I know Dr. Liz mentioned at the beginning of the slideshow that there wasn't like a lot of trust in young people to do. Like that was one of like the big research participation barriers. But I think just like learning about like the basic parts of research make it really a lot less scary for young people to learn to participate in it. Okay, I can do the next slide. Okay, I think, oh, okay. I think this is mostly demographics from
Yes, just
last year.
demographics. Yep. Shall I go to the youth
Yeah.
feedback? Yep. Here we go.
Oh wait, is that the, oh, can you go back to the demographics?
Yep.
Okay, I was just gonna read, oh, okay. It says 108 individuals were interested in YRAB participation, 32 completed enrollment. We've talked about topics anywhere from like mental health, like I mentioned. There's been a couple speakers on nutrition, sexual health. I think our last meeting was about a healthy relationships. So there's a lot of different topics. And then you can go to the next slide, please. There's been 9 meetings held between September and April, so all between school months. I remember you were saying one of the barriers to youth research participation was like a time constraint and accessibility constraints, but it's just once a month, which is really nice. It's like, I think it's like an hour each month. And honestly, I've been looking forward to it every month, even between like my jobs and stuff. It's just like a fun and relaxing way. It's also like pretty small. It says 32 youth enrolled, median age 17, ranges from 15 to 25, all genders, and about an average of 7 youth per meeting. So it's not too big where it feels like you can't get if you're like fighting to get your thoughts in. And it's really nice because you also get to have like one-on-one time. I guess like you get to talk one-to-one with like the actual researchers presenting their topics. So then you also get to hear like you can get advice from like professional researchers if you're someone who's really interested in going into that route. Yeah, I can do the next slide. I think at the end of every meeting, there's a youth feedback form where you talk about how, if you enjoyed the meeting on a scale of 1 to 10 or 1 to 5, how comfortable you felt, how easy it was to, how convenient it was to meet, and then if your feelings and thoughts you felt like you were respected in the meeting, and then overall how you felt the meeting went. And YRAB's always looking for ways to, make it better. But overall, I think it's been a really great way to kind of, it's like almost kind of relaxing. And then you also get to like meet a whole bunch of new people. Like that's how I met Dr. Liz. Like I never would have, found all these cool people if it wasn't for YRAB. So I think it looks really great on resumes. And then we get like a little bit of a stipend every month, which doesn't hurt. And I know we were talking about economic barriers too at the beginning, so that's always nice. And it's like a really good networking. Yeah, it's a really good way to network and also a great way to find leadership opportunities. Anything I'm missing, Dr. Liz?
No, that was perfect. And as you can see, we have had many, as Satomi is we actually have a wait list now of scientists who want to like get in, right? Because we only meet monthly, and they're like wanting feedback for their studies that involve young people, and want to get, input from YRAB. And one of the things that I love, Satomi, that you all have insisted on is that scientists also make themselves a little bit more vulnerable by sharing like kind of what motivates them, like why are they doing this research anyway? Why are you passionate about this, right? The kinds of prep that our young people have asked scientists to do before they come into the YRAB space, I think has been really powerful.
Yeah, I love that it feels like not impersonal. Like it's very like, it's not like a transaction where someone's coming in and just like is like, give me feedback. It's like more of like a conversation between like the researchers and the youth, and I really love that.
Indeed, and I think that's so much of what we're trying to do, right, is help scientists understand that this is about relationships. And we certainly have gotten some really great feedback from researchers themselves, right, about helping, there's the concrete stuff of like, yes, we help with the study flyers. Yes, we help with their recruitment strategy, right? They are also, I think, come out of these meetings with this last quote. We appreciated the opportunity to present and are thankful for the attention and thoughtful responses from the members. I think there's a little bit of, to be totally honest, sometimes a surprise on the part of scientists with how like our Youth Research Advisory Board like leans in, and how brilliant you all are in terms of it's not just solely feedback. There is really so much kind of wisdom, and it makes me really happy that you're helping to transform science, this way. So super grateful. So, I'm going to wrap up so we have time for questions, saying that what we're trying to do here, I think, is really do our science differently, that we are thinking about our young people's involvement as scientists in our work together, and that we are really then together focusing on improving youth thriving and racial equity through doing research together. And so this, I think, Satomi, you were reflecting on, right, which is that relationships come first in our work, and that we really hope that by focusing on relationship building and everything that we do, that we're going to drive more meaningful impact across our schools and neighborhoods and communities. And so with that, I would be remiss if I didn't say thanks to all of the folks, right, who support the work financially so that we can do this really mindful involvement of young people in our research to promote thriving. And this is my email. I'm happy to have you, any of you ask questions, and just want to say a huge thanks from all of us for the gift of your time and allowing us to share with you some of the work that we're doing here in Pittsburgh. So thanks to all, and let's see if there are any questions.
Yes, thank you so much to all of you, Dr. Miller, Satomi, Amiera, and Mike. This was such an impactful presentation, and what a way to kick off our morning. So thank you so much. We do have a number of questions, so I would like to start, and maybe surprisingly, not surprisingly, we have many questions for our youth. So one for Mike, and this is about the PEACE curriculum, is someone was wondering what improvements that he thinks could be made to a program like that.
Okay, so Mike had to go and take a final for a test for one of his classes. So I'm here filling in for him. I'm Kevin Clark, the community liaison for Still Valley. So
yeah, thank you. Welcome.
Yeah, I've been here the whole time. I work close with Mike and getting him prepared for this kind of stuff. So I was here in his corner, but it would be kind of hard for me to answer that question for him.
Absolutely.
So if you could kind of gear it more towards because I do facilitate the group, so maybe
Sure.
if I
You know,
have to,
maybe,
oh, go ahead.
sorry, Kevin. I'm wondering if maybe we could pose this question to all three of the youth, thinking about, you know, it's great to hear the achievements that have been made. Are there anything in their opinions, or Kevin, in your experience, what are some opportunities for improvement in some of the programs?
One thing I could say is like how Mike was kind of saying, to reiterate, just the continuation of involvement and just continuing to involve more students in it, and especially parents. Like the parent compartment of it would be huge, because they get to see, you know, what their child is doing and kind of how it affects them through, you know, a school day, and how, you know, they affect their peers and stuff like that. And also, you know, sometimes parents might be able to learn something too. You know, you're never too old to learn something new. And, you know, as an adult, you kind of get stuck in your ways. But when you see something is working for the youth, you kind of, it might, you know, allow you to kind of change your mind on certain things. So I would just say the continuation of growth and just involvement.
Absolutely, thank you. Amiera and Satomi, on that note, do you have something to add?
I'm sorry, it's loud here. What was your question?
Yeah, so we were just talking a little bit about any improvements that you would like to see in the program. So if you had a magic wand, what would you change, if anything?
If I had any improvements that I would think to be made, or the program's over, but I think they're doing it in person now. But I think they should, like, they already do a good job with welcoming the kids, but I feel like they should offer more like stuff and conversations to get to know each other better, because during our conversations everybody was more so like shy and scared to talk to each other and scared to speak up. And I think it was because they weren't comfortable and they didn't know the peers or the people that they were working with.
That's great feedback. Thank you, Amiera. And Satomi, anything that you'd like to add?
I think I know Dr. Liz said that there was like a whole wait list for YRAB, and I was like wondering if like YRAB could have like an in-person component. I don't know if I'm like asking for a lot, but like it would be cool to have like an in-person like meeting, even if like everyone couldn't attend, like they could have like both, and then it might be like a good way to like actually be able to meet the researchers who are presenting, and then it would be like more face to face. I don't know, just a thought.
Yeah, thank you. Great recommendation. And you know, this was a question, and it's actually, Kevin, you touched on it, and thank you for that input. This is about parent involvement. So maybe Amiera and Satomi, you could speak on this. Would you like parents to be more involved? And if so, how could they be involved? Or how can parents be a part of the change?
I think parents could be involved by like maybe adding more support, or like how would I put this? Like being a better support system, or actually knowing about the things that their children are doing. Because if they know about the things that their children are doing and what they're getting into, they can like push them out there more, help them to like give it to other people.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Satomi, do you have anything to add about parental involvement?
I can only speak for YRAB. I feel like YRAB is like okay without parents, just in my opinion. I don't know what they would like specifically add to YRAB. I feel like that might be more towards like the Wiley and creating piece.
Yeah. Dr. Miller, do you want to add anything as well? Great. So the next question is for Dr. Miller. Can you speak a little bit about how you integrate some of the youth recommendations that you receive from the opportunities for feedback that youth give you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'll start actually with YRAB, with the Youth Research Advisory Board, because this getting and prepping scientists before they even come into the space was really youth feedback, right? They were like, you know, these people are like so stiff and they seem so uncomfortable, and like they need more preparation before sort of coming in and understanding that young people, number one, are not scary, and number two, right, that this is really about building you know, relationships, right? And so that prepping of scientists beforehand was definitely one example of how young people's feedback really came right into you know, into the work. And what's interesting and around interventions like youth leadership in action, like creating peace, is that even though we're in the midst of a research study and evaluating the intervention, I will also share that there's constantly this kind of iterating on what we're learning, right? Whether it's from the adult facilitators or the young people themselves. And one of the things that we've put in more time for young people to really think about what community projects they want to be working on, what's kind of the next steps that come out of creating peace. And you heard Mike talk about going from having done several rounds of creating peace curriculum to now being an expect, respect teen leader, you know, in the school. And so having that kind of you know, being really mindful that young people were asking, like, what's next? Like, this curriculum's great, but what's next, right? And so we're being really mindful about that. I think the other bit of feedback from young people has been that some of the adults are not as inclusive as they could be, right? They stumble on things like pronouns, they stumble on really creating space for young people's voices. And sometimes adults are really uncomfortable with silence, right? And just letting young people think and process and actually talk. And so some of the feedback has been, we really want the adults to listen more. We want them to be more facile with being, you know, with inclusive language, you know, those kinds of, you know, things. And so we've taken that feedback and brought it to our monthly training. We have a learning collaborative for the adult facilitators to be able to actually work through some of that as well. And then in terms of youth leadership in action, I think Amiera is absolutely right that having space for young people to just get to know each other. Amiera is a huge fan of various like icebreakers, and I have really come to appreciate how important. I used to actually think that, oh, icebreakers are so silly and like we should just like, let's get down to work, and not appreciating how much doing those icebreakers and having that, like doing something silly and laughing together actually really helps to do the work, right? It's not sort of extra. And that piece of taking the time to get to know each other is really important as well.
Thank you so much. That was a great response and actually answered a couple questions that we also had in the chat. So thank you so much for that. I do want to be respectful of everyone's time this morning because we did get off to an earlier start. So I am going to go ahead and hand it back over to Dana and Ayush. But I just wanted to let you know that we do have several other questions that were in the chat. So I know, Dr. Miller, you shared your contact information. So I would encourage people to get in touch with you if they have questions, if that's okay. Dr. Miller, you can just give me a thumbs up. Great, thank you. And again, a really heartfelt thank you, Satomi, Amiera, Kevin as well. Thank you so much for your contributions today. Really appreciate it. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it back over to Dana and Ayush.